Welcome to Wellness Rebranded.
We know there is so much conflicting health and fitness advice out there.
And you're tired of the wellness fads, endless diets, and impossible standards that make you feel like nothing you do is ever enough.
You're ready to tune into your mind and body and feel empowered around health.
We're the Healing Trio, here to help you redesign your relationships with food, fitness, and yourself.
I'm Elizabeth, registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor.
I'm Maria, licensed mental health therapist.
And I'm Tara, personal trainer.
Together, we're changing the narrative on health away from diet culture, hustle culture, and toxic positivity and towards healthful self-care.
So grab your water bottle, get ready to laugh, learn, and grow.
And let's start rebranding your wellness journey. Welcome back to another episode of Wellness Rebranded. We have an awesome guest here today. At Teen Savvy Coaching, Samantha Straub helps parents of teens and tweens step into their parenting role with calm and confidence. A licensed clinical counselor, veteran educator, and longtime school counselor, Sam coaches parents to tame household chaos and strengthen the parent-child connection while also maintaining healthy boundaries. She gives parents the tools they need so the whole family can move from surviving adolescence to thriving during this exciting time of growth and transition. So Sam, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to talk with you ladies.
Yes, I have known Sam for a very long time. She was the school guidance counselor in my children's school. We have kids similar ages. I think of you, I asked you before we hopped on, what title do you like to have? For me, your title will forever be Teen Whisperer.
Oh, thank you.
Because that is how I think of you. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to talk with you all today.
We wanted to talk to you about having healthy relationships and connections with your teens and talk to us about how that connects with wellness right off the bat.
Well, as a therapist, I would say that wellness, a key component of wellness is the quality of our interpersonal relationships. And I don't know about you or your listeners, but those of you with children, when you're at odds with your children, like your wellness suffers. Or when your child is suffering, for that matter, your wellness suffers. Yeah. So I would say that the work I do enhances family connections, which reduces stress, reduces anxiety, enhances feelings of connection. On a chemical level, like it produces more dopamine and oxytocin. Those are like feel-good chemicals, right? But just on an interpersonal level, connections really matter, and nothing's more important than the connections in our nuclear families.
Yes, it makes so much sense.
That old saying, you're only as happy as your unhappiest child.
It's true,
yeah.
Right?
100%.
Right? All three of you are parents. I know of different age groups, but like when your child is agitated, upset, going through something, like you carry that in your heart and on your head too, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would say the work I do, it's in part about interpersonal relationships, but also I think when you feel like you're out of your depths on something, that's a stressor. And it's easy to feel that way as the parent of a teen or a tween, because you're like, I just got this. And frankly, like elementary school kids are very straightforward to parent and relative to other phases, because they can talk to you, like unlike infants where you don't know what's going on. They can talk and you can understand what they mean. Their problems are relatively straightforward, and like a hug from your parent often solves a lot of ills, not all of them, but like when you hit adolescence, all this stuff goes on in your body and your kid's body where their brains start functioning in qualitatively different ways, and you as a parent can be wondering, like, is this me? Like, are they acting kind of in this off the wall way because I'm somehow dropping the ball as a parent? Is this normal developmental stuff? And then even if you can answer those questions, you might not be able to answer, well, how do I help them? Because the territory is new. So that feeling right there is stressful. And so I think some of the work I do is also helping parents determine what's normal and what's not, so that they can just like feel calmer and as you said, Elizabeth, more confident in their responses.
Yeah. So what do you think? I actually have a question that's maybe an unusual first question, but I'm curious. What do you think are the biggest mistakes parents make in trying to communicate with their teens?
Yeah, I have a quick answer to that. Like, it's the thing that most of my clients this is the biggest mistake that parents make, trying to do too much in one sitting. It's a mistake that I think we've all made, where you're like, I need to communicate all of my parenting messages right now because I have you as a semi-captive audience. And so I'm gonna like parent dump. And my advice is always like, give out your parent wisdom in doses that your child can ingest. And then we talk about how to do that. But I think that's a big mistake.
That's such a great point.
And you know what? I think it applies not only to your relationship with your child, it's really to your relationship with your partner, co-workers. You don't want to dump all the things that you want to happen or that you are, your expectations in one conversation. Like, I don't even think we're, meant to do that all at once.
Yeah, I call that, I recommend drive-by parenting. I said most kids cannot tolerate a parking session, right? Like you just have to drive by, drop some wisdom out the window and keep going. Right?
I'm sorry, I love that analogy.
Yeah, some of them get overwhelmed, and when your kid can take more than a little bit, like they give you signals when the iron is hot, but most of the time the iron is cold. And so you have to do it in like small doses.
Yeah, and it's such a great point, because I think there's times when, if I'm being fully transparent and honest, I know that my kids are probably done hearing from me, but yet I'm not done. And so I still keep trying.
Yes. You're not alone.
Thank you.
Well, and that's because we are humans too, and we have needs. And so when we're like, I'm uncomfortable because I think my child doesn't know something they need to know for like functioning, and I know what it is they need to know. The idea of not telling them right now is agitating to us. Yeah. Right. So a lot of times we feel like we unload our stuff because we're like, this is critical information for them. But I'd say that, most times parents aren't wrong. It is critical information, but critical information delivered in the wrong way, it doesn't go in. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Good thing to remember.
So Sam, in the notes that you made for this episode, I see that you're talking about research shows that kids who report feeling well connected to their parents has like a ton of benefits. Can you talk about that research?
Yes, studies have repeatedly shown that kids who feel like they have strong connections with their families, with their parents, they make better choices around substance use. They're at less risk for addiction and unhealthy substance use. Though they have better romantic relationships, they're at less risk for like running towards a significant other to fill a connection need that they're not getting at home. Okay, right? Consequently, they're at less risk for abuse, like relationship abuse. They are at less risk for depression. They express more optimism. Like all these things that are protective factors for the world start with quality connections at home.
And I want to make sure for our listeners that it's not a cause-effect thing, right? I want to make sure that everyone knows that if there's anybody out there that has a kid that is abusing substances, is not because you didn't have a good connection, right?
Thank you. That's accurate.
Right.
Yeah, that's totally accurate. All of those things that I just went over, those risks, like any child is susceptible to them. But research shows that the risks lower.
Correct.
Those who have stronger connections with their families. Thank you, Maria, for that. Yeah.
And it's a great tool. I mean, absolutely. You mentioned protective factors. And for our listeners, protective factors is anything that is going to lower the probabilities of, things happening like, substance use or mental health disorders or things like that. And it makes so much sense that having that connection with your kids creates so many things, or, create the environment for kids to thrive the best we can, right? And it's such a good thing to have.
Yeah. So, and also, parents, I say, this is something else I say in addition to drive-by parenting. I always say, parents, you are your child's first and most important mirror. So when they look at you, you need to be behaving and interacting with them in a way that reflects back, not every time you interact with them, but like on an overall average way, you're okay. The world is a safe place for you and you can do it, right? Of course, I love you is how we usually do this. That's what we say, but our behaviors have to also indicate, like, I believe in your capacity to do things. right? You can do it, and I'll teach you how to do it. We as teenagers are more likely to drink in those messages when we feel like we are well liked, we can trust our parents, they are predictable, right? Like we understand the rules say this, and when I break it, they enforce it, right? There's predictable boundaries in the household. That all creates an atmosphere of safety and trust, which means that when you act as that mirror, they're going to believe you, right? They're going to take in the message. And when kids walk out into the world feeling like, okay, I can do it, I am an okay human being, that's the protective factor that you were referring to, Maria. And they tend to do better. They tend to take the good kind of risks and not the bad kind of risks. Like they tend to take the risks that result in growth. Like, I'm going to try and make a new friend, or I kind of wanted to go out to the play, but I'm a little scared. I'm going to do it anyway. Like, those are the good kind of risks that teenagers take when they are well connected with their parents. And as adults, who I presume are the ones listening to this podcast, because rare are the teenagers who groove on podcasts, right? Like, as adults, when we know our kids are more prone for the good kind of risks than the negative kind of risks, we can rest easy.
Yeah. And you know, Sam, you make me think, you mentioned the word growth, and it makes me think that in my case, motherhood taught me how to grow myself, because I had to learn how to be in a good emotional, mental state to provide all these things that you're describing. Because if you're coming from a place where you are struggling yourself, it's really hard to connect with your kids in a positive way, or in a way that is going to serve as a protective factor, right? So how important it is to, maybe I want to hear your take on this, to go hand by hand, the importance of doing work on yourself, to not, because that's going to come out in the way you parent.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that, you can't pour from an empty cup. And if your cup is empty, you're going to be trying to parenting. What I say is you're building a skyscraper on quicksand, right? You can be putting all of the ingredients in place, but your foundation is shaky, right? And kids sense that. So if you want to be building the skyscraper of your child's, future, make your foundation strong, because that's what it's being built on. It's built on your efforts, right? And as you mentioned, being a parent, it grows you. It makes you change, right? I was talking with actually a therapy client of mine not that long ago. I won't go into details, but they were talking about their relationship with their parent. The parent did something unusual for the parent, but like so validating for the kid. Like, the parent responded in just the right way. And the kid shared this for me. And I said, and the kid was like, they never would have done this. I said, you are teaching them. Like, being your parent is changing your parent. Your parent is changing for the better because you live with them, right? They're growing because of you. It was just a neat moment. And because the kid felt like, oh yeah, as opposed to I'm different from my parents and I always can't connect. Like, he felt so validated. It was neat. It was a good experience.
Yeah, that is amazing. So what tools do we need in our toolbox to effectively communicate with our teens, or presumably anyone?
I find that most communication breakdowns between parents and teens happen during something I call change conversations. And that is when you're asking your child to change in some way. And the change could be change from one state, like go from being in bed to being awake to going out the door to school, right? That's a change conversation. Or I'd like you to approach this task differently. That's a change conversation. I'd like you to get this task done. I'd like you to stop behaving in this way towards your sister. These are all change conversations. And I'd say that those are the types of conversations that tend to lead to confrontation and breakdown. So what I teach my clients is I teach them about the stages of change, which are as follows. Pre-contemplation, that's when you aren't thinking about change at all. Then contemplation, you're giving it a little thought, but you're not doing much about it. Planning, so that can be mental planning or putting steps in place so that you can then take action, which is the next step. And then the last step is maintenance. And some people who will also add relapse, which I usually do, because teenagers, when they do make change, it's usually not like a steady uphill battle or line. It's like a jagged uphill line. They fall backwards periodically. And what I find with change conversations is that most parents enter at planning or action, and teens are often at pre-contemplation or contemplation.
Right.
So parents come in thinking, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. And the kid is like, I'm not even, what? Right? They're not even there yet. And
that was a great impression of a teenager.
Yeah. And a parent is like, how could you not be there? This is like the most basic and most obvious.
Common sense.
Yes, right. Like, it's time for school. You go to school every single day, right? Monday through Friday is when you go to school, and you go to school at this time, and it's this time. What made you think today was a different day? But teenagers, some of them, because of still developing executive functions, which are the skills in charge of that we need to adult, essentially, they don't always pick up on these patterns, or they pick up on them sometimes, but not others. So when a parent enters a conversation, they're usually at planning or action, and oftentimes their kids are not caught up with them. And so that can create friction and resistance from the part of the teen, and like incredulity from the part of the parent. Like, I can't believe that we're here. So what I teach parents is that those stages of change, and then I teach them methods of communicating with their teen, but also with anyone. This is a very dignified way to talk to people, for how you can shift people through the stages of change. And it starts by meeting them where they are, not dragging them to where you are. Wow. And so it's slower. It involves open-ended questions. It involves reflecting back what you observe and understand and feel, right? Like what feelings you're having while the change conversation is taking place. It's rooted in something called motivational interviewing, which is it's a therapeutic form of speaking with someone that was initially used to work with those battling substance use.
Right.
And when you think about teenagers and those battling substance use, there's actually some similarities in that most, like if someone who's dealing with a substance use issue comes into therapy, they either want to change, or someone has put them in therapy who thinks they need to change, right? It's always a change conversation, but there's this like neurological thing in the way called addiction that's getting in the way of their ability to change or to want to change, right? If it's mandated, right? And when it comes to teenagers, it's the same thing. Like, someone wants them to change, and their brains are in a certain place where they can't get behind that change, or they're like, yeah, I want to, but I can't pull it off. So it's not dissimilar. I mean, I'm not comparing those who are battling addiction to people who have like the brain of a teenager. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying there are hurdles between the wanting to change, or someone wanting to change, and the ability to do so in both situations. And so this type of questioning is useful.
And it makes sense. And I think when you put it that way, it also takes so much responsibility from the teenager, because many times we take it personal. It's like, how come you cannot do this? But again, when we really understand that they're trying to do all these while they have an adolescent brain, and we really understand that, what is behind an adolescent brain. I mean, the first time many years ago when I heard that our brains are not fully developed until around age 25, it's like, oh, okay, we're asking other human beings to do things from our adult brain to a brain that is not there yet. It takes away a little bit of the pressure, I feel, of how much we ask from our adolescents.
Yeah, and it can be mystifying to know when you can ask them, like, because sometimes adolescents can really rise to a challenge, and the adolescent brain being undeveloped, one part of the brain is actually very well developed, and that's the emotional reactivity part of the brain. When you hit puberty, that like skyrockets, but the part of the brain that's in charge of regulating emotions and then doing all those other things like planning and consequential thinking and emotional attunement, like paying attention to others' emotions, time management, like knowing how long a minute is, knowing how long 5 minutes till dinner is, like starting things that are boring, stopping things that are fun but not good at the moment, like inhibition. Those are all executive functions, and that's the gap. So they're really emotional, and the ability to do all the stuff that you need to in order to regulate those emotions or override those emotions, that doesn't come till age 25. Mm-hmm. So what we see as kids, but that part of the brain works decently well so long as there's no emotional agitation. So you can see a kid who's like a great problem solver and functions very much like an adult. Under some circumstances, you put that kid under a certain type of stress, you make them afraid, nervous, make them feel judged, and suddenly they function like a totally different individual. And that's because their emotional brain has hijacked the rational brain, because it's very easy for that to happen during adolescence.
And sometimes we create that, thinking that through fear or bringing them down is how we're going to get responses. And really, human beings, not only adolescents, human beings in general, I wouldn't think would work that way.
Well, we do respond to fear, but it's not great for the relationship. So right. As I coach parents, like I'm saying, you can get your child to fall in line through threats and fear. It does actually work, but it doesn't result in long-term healthy connections. And what I want for families is both of those things. I want for kids to internalize values, to operate within a set of guidelines, and to feel really connected and supported by their families. And I want parents to feel connected and liked by their kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you give us a couple more tips on how to keep the parent-child relationship strong?
Well, I think of a relationship like a bank, right? And so I always say, like, make sure you're putting 3 to 5 times as many deposits in as your teen is making withdrawals, because adolescent behavior, it does actually create a lot of withdrawals, because there's so many of those change conversations. Like, hey, do something different, be something different right now, right? That's a withdrawal. So deposits are anything that communicates to your kid, I like you and I'm here for you. What I say is, if you're going to offer praise to your kid, that's a deposit, but you can't throw a party when you offer praise. So an example is, like, Tara, if you were my son, I have a son, so let's say you're my kid, and I've been asking you to make your bed or change your sheets. This is getting very real, actually. And you delay, and you finally do it. I could say, oh, yeah, like, it took you a week, man, right? It did take a week. But I could say, the other thing I could say is, thank you for changing your sheets. I have been asking you for a while, right? Like, whereas, and that's like a deposit. I'm not throwing a party, right? But thank you for changing your sheets. I could even say, thank you for changing your sheets. Your bed looks really good. Mm-hmm. Right? You did a nice job making your bed. Mm-hmm. Because we want to praise behavior we want to see repeated. So that's one of the things I say is be intentional about putting deposits in the relationships bank. Teens really like novelty also. Like, they like when things get mixed up, in a good way. So, like, doing little surprises for your teen, and that could be as simple as, like, in my household, for example, I make dinners most of the time, half the time, let's just say, and then we eat leftovers or chicken tenders. But the adults are in charge of dinner in my house, and everybody's on their own for breakfast or lunch and snacks. But, like, an act of love that I might show my teen, and it's also an act of novelty, is, like, I might put together a plate and bring the plate to where they're studying, or even just, like, playing video games. Hey, I made you a snack. I thought you might like it. Mm-hmm. And I don't usually and I don't do that so that someone falls at my feet and says, thank you, you're such a great mom, I'm so glad you're in my life, right? That's not.
That would be great, but yes.
Yeah. That's not ever what happens. But I do thank you. Oh, pepperoni and crackers. Okay. Right. Like, I get some kind of, like, I do get a positive response, and it tells my kid, hey, my mom likes me enough to do random acts of kindness.
Right.
So
my mom did this when I was growing up. When I got to high school, maybe like once a year, she would let me take like a mental health day, and I might stay home and watch movies and just chill, or maybe me and her would go to lunch and shopping or whatever. But, like, every now and then she would let me do that, and here it is, like, 20 years later, and I'm still talking about how great that was.
Because it was like, I see you, I care about you, and you know what? Like, your needs matter to me. Like, expectations be damned, right? Like, what a great message that she sent, right? Mm-hmm. And she wasn't saying you get a mental health day every week because you're afraid of something and I'm gonna let you escape from it. It was simply like, I want to be with you, or you deserve rest, and fun. Those matter too. Yes. Yeah. And I would say that another thing is to stay well regulated yourself.
As a toddler mom, that's super hard for me.
It's super hard for every mom. Like I've got bad news for you, Tara.
No.
It doesn't get easier. Like because like your child it does actually get easier. I found it when my children were 9 and 7, I said to my husband, I could freeze this age. I love this age. They can buckle themselves in. They can get their own snack. They take a bath by themselves. They still want my hugs at bedtime, right? Like it was a great year, just the year. That's it, right? Like, but they challenge us. They press our buttons. Like, who has my heart more thoroughly than my children? Nobody. Right. So when they do things that drive me bonkers, I feel it more thoroughly than I do somebody else because I care a great deal about them and our relationship. And so the need to stay regulated from my own stance when I'm interacting with them, I think that's critical. And it's something that I also echo to parents when I'm coaching them. And parents will say, how do I do that? Right. And that's what we work on together sometimes.
So Sam, I have to say, and for our listeners there, if you haven't worked with Sam, I really encourage you to schedule a call with her. I personally have done it in the past. And what I love about your approach is that you're so down to earth and you make parents feel that they're not alone. Many times we're inside the four walls of our house and we think that our kids are the only ones doing that and we're the only ones responding or reacting to their behavior a certain way. And then when we realize, at least in my case, that it's part of a whole bigger group and that there are things out there that we can try that sound, straight to the point, that are doable at home, it can be life-changing, right?
Yeah.
So I encourage everyone out there to really reach out to you for a discovery call or to start working with you or maybe one of your workshops or classes that you have, because it's so worth it. You will be putting that, filling up that bank also for your relationship with your child. When you get tools like this, is something that you're bringing in to yourself.
Thank you for saying that, Maria. And what I always tell parents, even parents who are in really high conflict with their teen, I say the best parent for your child is you. Mm-hmm. Really, like there's no other parent who's better for your child than you. What they want is a solid, healthy, connected relationship with you. They don't want a random, solid, healthy, connected relationship. Like you are the best person for your child. And so we work from that standpoint. And that right there is a point of strength for every parent, right? Like we're wired to connect with our caregivers. And of course, parents are wired to connect with their kids.
And I don't know if this relates to what you're saying, but I don't know why it came to mind. I heard this a few years ago and I really liked it when somebody said, because sometimes we have all these expectations for ourselves as parents of how we should be doing all these things and being the perfect parent for those out there who have, those expectations. But somebody said, you only have to be the perfect parent for a perfect kid. Something along those lines, meaning there's no perfect kid, therefore there's no perfect parent. Whatever you're doing is what you're supposed to be doing. And there's always room for improvement. But, to take away a little bit of that, pressure again of doing it a specific certain way or thinking that we're always doing it wrong. I don't know.
Yeah. And good enough is good enough. Yeah. Right. And also kids are so resilient and you get a gazillion do-overs as a parent and as a kid. Yeah. Right. So it's not the single moments that matter, although there are single moments that do matter. But we don't remember all the moments. What we remember is the vibe we get in general from our parents. We have peaks, right? We have some and pits, right? We have things that we remember that are like wonderful and awesome. Like Tara remembers the mental health days. Those are like peaks. Those are great peaks, right? And I'm sure we can all call back pits too from our interactions with our parents growing up. That's normal. But what we remember in general is the vibe. It's like the feeling we got from our relationship with them. And so you don't have to do it perfectly. Yes. You have to be authentic and you have to apologize when you screw up. And I can teach people how to do that and to recognize when they've screwed up, because boy, teenagers love that. Really. Like I was a classroom teacher and I remember losing my cool at a class one time, totally losing it, off the wall, totally losing it. And the next day I said, guys, we got to start class, and I need to apologize to you. Like, I didn't like how things were going, but how I responded was not okay. I needed to stay better regulated. I'm sure I didn't say that, I was in my 20s, but I needed to handle myself better. And what was cool? The kids were like, well, so did we. We weren't giving you our best, and we'll do better. It was like a connection builder in the classroom.
Yeah.
Right. Because I was authentic. I had definitely screwed up. And if I pretended that screw up didn't happen, like I was asking them to like buy into a reality that didn't exist. It's like, oh, I don't know. It was a good moment. And I feel like that can be replicated in families as well.
Yes, absolutely.
My husband was a teacher for 4 short years. And he's famous for saying that every now and then you have to show the class that you're a little crazy. just like freak out for no reason, just so they know you're not one to be trifled with. So inadvertently, I feel like you did that.
Maybe. I mean, most of what I say is react small to small problems so that you don't have to deal with big problems. And I would say that that's the case in parenting also. Like handle small things small. Yes. Redirect in a small way.
If you're worried about being a good mom, you probably already are.
Yes.
And I feel like that gives me a lot of like comfort knowing like, at least I'm okay-ish.
Okay-ish is exactly where all of us are. And as Maria said, most of us feel like we're in this, like these 4 walls together, like we're not always sharing our parenting woes. And as kids get into their teens, we share them even less for 2 reasons. One, out of privacy for our kids. Like when my children were toddlers and they were like dumping spaghetti on the floor, I'm like, how do you get them to keep the damn bowl on the high chair, right? Like that's not an embarrassing thing to say at the drop-off line. And they're like, use the suction cup bowls, right? Like that's a kind of conversation I might have been having at preschool. But we're not saying like, I found beer in the back of my kid's closet, right? And where was that being consumed? Like those aren't things that we're saying as easily. Or my kid is failing a class, or whatever. My kid's depressed. Because we worry those things happen because we failed as a parent. Exactly. And B, we don't want to violate our child's privacy. And so we keep a lot of this stuff in our households, and we need tribes to know what we're doing. And so Teen Savvy Coaching, I opened it in part so that I can be a sounding board for parents who are going through stuff as their kids are going through stuff. And Maria, you mentioned something like work in a group. I'm kicking off a group. I was just on a discovery call, and the woman was thinking about signing on for some one-on-one coaching. And I said, well, I'm doing this group called the Homework Cure, where we're going to be talking about how to help your child have better homework strategies through the way you interact with your kid. And there's videos and workbooks, but also a live call every week with other parents. And she's like, "Ooh, I want that." Yeah, and she's like, it wasn't totally homework she was looking for, but she's like, "I want the tribe of parents."
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you, share your all your information. Even though we're going to have it in the show notes, please share it here for everyone.
Sure. My business is called Teen Savvy Coaching, and the website is teensavvycoaching.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Teen Savvy Coaching on Instagram, and Facebook is Teen Savvy Coaching with Samantha Straub. And you can work with me in several capacities. I offer one-on-one coaching. You can even purchase just a single one-off. I wasn't offering that, but people were asking for it. So you can go onto my website and purchase a single session with me. You can also purchase a group of sessions where you can just have me at your beck and call over time, and parents tend to like that. And like I said, I'm kicking off in January a group program called the Homework Cure. So if you are dealing with a kid who's an underachiever or a perfectionist or an avoider, these are some common profiles, and I'm going to be talking about how to navigate those. And if you want to hear more, I think the freebie in the show notes actually addresses those profiles and gives parents some immediate tools outside of any coaching program that I offer. Work with me through that ebook right away.
Love it.
Thank
Sam,
you so
thank you
much.
so much for being here with us, for accepting this invitation. I love what you're doing. Please never stop. It's needed. And I think you're probably the only one in our, in our community doing exactly this. And it's just perfect. It's helping already so many families to connect more, or at least to have the tools towards that goal.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And right back at you. Don't stop this wellness talk. I'm a big believer.
I agree.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
we'll have you back another time and we'll talk even deeper on this topic about adolescence. But thank you for being here with us. Thank you to our listeners. And if you like this episode, don't forget that you can leave a review, you can like, you can share with a friend, and we'll see you at our next episode. Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with me outside of this podcast, you can find me on Instagram at coaching_therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. You can find me at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition or in my Facebook group, Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Tara De Leon Fitness. Guys, if you loved this episode or any of our other episodes, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really, really helps us get the non-diet word out to the rest of the world. So please leave us a review.
Yes, thank you.